the night has come and the land is dark, and that moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't shed one tear, just as long as your people come and stand by me. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by. Come on, stand by me. Yeah. Oh, when the sky that we look upon, well, she tumble and fall on the mountains, they should crumble into the sea. I won't cry, no, I won't shed a tear, just as long as you stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Please stand by me. Stand by me. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Please stand by me. Stand by me. Oh, baby, baby. So darling, darling, stand. Oh, stand. Oh, stand. Stand by. Come on, stand by me. Stand. Oh, won't you stand? Oh, stand. Stand by. Come on, stand.
Bueno, hola a todos, muchas, pero muchas gracias por estar acá. Antes que nada, primero quiero aclarar que voy a ir hablando en español y en inglés para que tengan un poquitito de paciencia. So, hello everyone, and thank you very, very much for being here. Today I have the immense pleasure to welcome you in both Spanish and English, so thank you for your patience. Para nosotros es una alegría enorme estar empezando este evento que da inicio al Programa de Innovadores Locales 2022. Un programa que reúne a gobiernos locales, sector público y emprendedores sociales a trabajar colectivamente por el diseño de iniciativas sistémicas e innovadoras que le den verdadera solución a los problemas de nuestras ciudades. Esta es una propuesta impulsada por AYNI, una alianza entre Ashoka, Vía Educación, COLAB, Laboratorio de Innovación Social de la Universidad Católica de Chile, y RIL, la Red de Innovación Local. So, welcome to our kickoff event of the Local Innovators Program 2022, a program that brings together local governments and social entrepreneurs to work collaboratively and design systemic and innovative initiatives that give real solutions to the problems of our cities. This program is being co-led by AYNI, an alliance between Ashoka, Vía Educación, the Social Innovation Collab at the Catholic University of Chile, and RIL, the Local Innovation Network. Bueno, para empezar, me gustaría decir un poco la historia o de cómo nace este programa, o cómo venimos. El 2021 fue un año de mucho crecimiento y aprendizaje para este programa y para esta alianza. Por primera vez lo hicimos global, junto a 80 equipos de Latinoamérica en una cápsula en español y junto a 20 equipos de África, Europa del Este y Asia en una cápsula en inglés. Y los resultados fueron increíbles y no hicieron más que afianzar este gran compromiso que tenemos con lo que ya creemos que es un movimiento. Somos, por sobre todas las cosas, una gran comunidad de innovadores locales en movimiento. Y sabemos que toda esta comunidad unida tiene una enorme potencia. Todos nosotros juntos realmente estamos convencidos que tenemos mucha fuerza para cambiar y transformar nuestras realidades. Y esta fuerza, esta vitalidad, hace que cada año nos propongamos crecer más y explorar y mejorar la propuesta que llega a cada uno de los territorios con los que trabajamos. Y este año, por supuesto, no va a ser la excepción. So, just to say it in English, 2021 was a year of much growth and learning for the program. For the first time, we made it global, with 80 teams from Latin America on the Spanish track, and 20 teams from Africa, Eastern Europe, and Asia on the English track. And the results were amazing, and they only strengthen our commitment to what we believe is already a movement. We are overall a large community of active and engaged local innovators. And we know that all of us together, all this community together, have a lot of strength and capacity to change our reality. And this renewed commitment makes that every year we want to grow more and make it better and to improve the experience of each of the cities we work with. And this year, for sure, will not be exception. El 2021 creo que nos dejó, por sobre todas las cosas, dos grandes mensajes. Lo más transformador de este programa, como decía, es la enorme comunidad que se va tejiendo y le va dando fuerza a este movimiento. Es como un hilo conductor, es una columna vertebral que trasciende todos estos procesos de diseño, de iniciativas que vamos lanzando todos los años. Y para nosotros, darle sostén y marco a esta comunidad, darle un marco, un orden a esta comunidad global de innovadores locales es una de las grandes apuestas del 2022, de este año. Y nuestro segundo gran aprendizaje es que también logramos un camino. Logramos un proceso metodológico y un abordaje muy integral y con verdadera capacidad de cambio. No me voy a meter en si los problemas actuales son o no son más desafiantes que los pasados, ya hay un montón dicho o escrito sobre esto, pero sí creo que tenemos dos grandes ventajas en la actualidad. Hoy somos mucho más conscientes de esta complejidad, de la interdisciplinariedad que opera en cada uno de los desafíos con los que queremos trabajar, porque podemos tener hoy un mejor análisis o podemos tener una mejor lectura de las dimensiones o de las cosas que operan, los actores que operan en cada uno de nuestros desafíos, y por otro lado podemos estar esperanzados con que tenemos realmente las herramientas y tenemos las palancas necesarias y tenemos la gente necesaria para poder hacerle frente de una manera adecuada y acorde a esta complejidad. So I was saying that our experience in 2021 left us with two great lessons. The first one is that the most transformative aspect of AYNI is the enormous community that is being woven and giving strength to this movement. It is the common thread, the backbone that transcends the design processes of all the participating cities. And for us, giving support to this global community of local innovators is one of the big bets of this year. And our second great learning is that we also refined the methodology that teams use to design their local collective system change initiatives. I won't get into whether or not our current problems are more or less challenging than the ones in the past. It's a lot said about that. But we do have two great advantages today. I'm very sure about that. Today, we are more aware of this complexity, of the complexity of our programs and of their interdependence. We can better understand the dimension of our challenges. And on the other hand, we can be hopeful, and we can be sure that we have the tools and the necessary levers and the necessary people to face them in an effective way. Bueno, por otro lado, este año el lema del programa es Ciudades de Oportunidades. Y esto es porque creemos que no hay un tema, no hay una necesidad a la que valga más la pena aplicar este camino de diseño que este. Elegimos Ciudades de Oportunidades porque queremos queremos poner foco y queremos unir nuestros esfuerzos para trabajar sobre la enorme capacidad que de verdad, que realmente tienen las ciudades en transformar la generación de oportunidades que ofrece a su ciudadanía, como contracar una pobreza que pasa de generación en generación y persiste en la mayoría de nuestros territorios. Y el proceso de diseño que proponemos, que está centrado en las personas, que involucra a la sociedad, que está uniendo mentes y une los campos de acción de gobiernos locales, de sector público, de emprendedores sociales, de organizaciones de la sociedad civil, tiene que poder transformar de raíz las iniciativas que se implementan en nuestras ciudades y que relacionan y que están relacionadas a la generación de oportunidades, al acceso equitativo a las oportunidades y a lograr ciudades más justas. So this year, the theme of AYNI program is Cities of Opportunities. And this is because we believe that there is no other topic that is more worthwhile to apply this collective design journey to than this one. We chose Cities of Opportunities because we want to put focus on working on the enormous capacity, and we know that it is this way, the enormous capacity that cities have to transform and generate opportunities for all their citizens. We believe that through a human-centered design process, which engage diverse perspectives in our society and leverage the complementary expertise of assets of local governments and social entrepreneurs, we should be able to create opportunities for the good of all. So, entonces, con todo esto dicho y con estas palabras iniciales de bienvenida, otra vez, bienvenidos al programa de Innovadores Locales. Vamos a ver un poco con relación al evento de hoy y a la agenda del día, qué es lo que nos va a tener acá juntos los próximos minutos, las próximas horas. Los próximos 45 minutos vamos a escuchar a Peter Senghi y a Jerú Bilimoria, acompañados por Linda Peya de Ayoka. Después vamos a tener un bloque de 20 minutos con la experiencia de participantes del año pasado, escuchar cómo lo vivieron y cuál fue su experiencia. Y después vamos a tener una última media hora optativa para las personas que quieran conocer más sobre cómo participar, cómo inscribirse y más información relevante del programa. So, with all these initial words, welcome once again to the Local Innovators Program. Thanks for being here. Thanks a lot for being here. And regarding today's agenda, in the next 45 minutes, we are going to talk with Peter Senghi and Jerú Bilimoria, moderated by Linda Peya from Ashoka. After that, we will have a 20 minutes block hearing about the experience of participants from last year editions of AYNI. And after that, we will have the last half hour optional for those who want to learn more about how to participate, how to apply to the program, and more relevant information about this program. So, hope you find it interesting. Pero bueno, antes de empezar con el próximo bloque y meternos en la conversación o la entrevista más interesante, vamos a hacer un corte rapidito para poder conocer un poco más quiénes están acá. Esperemos que estén la mayoría desde la computadora, porque desde el teléfono va a ser un poco más caótico. Van a encontrar en el chat un link de Menti, así que a ver si pueden entrar ahí, o entran, si no, por el código QR que ven en la pantalla, y contesten las preguntas. So I was saying that before we start with the next part, let's do a quick activity so we can get to know each other a little bit more, a little bit better. You will see in the chat a link to Menti, or you will also see a QR code in the screen. You can access from there too. And please answer the questions there. Hope you are, most of you are from the computer, because from the phone it's more difficult. So I'm going to wait for some seconds for you to answer there. Y esperar unos segundos para que puedan contestar y vemos cómo sale. A ver. Bueno, ahí estoy viendo algunas respuestas. Hay alguien que está en el medio del océano, pero vamos viendo mucho de Latinoamérica. Okay, so I was saying someone that is in the middle of the ocean, but it's okay. It's quite far from us. Interesting that. So a lot of Latin America. Welcome you all. We are so glad to receiving you again. Let's see, I wait a little bit more, unos segundos más, some more seconds. Y me están diciendo el link del Menti. Bueno, ya va a llegar. Ahí está el link de Menti. Si lo quieren ver, ahí van a poder acceder. Bueno, me parece que lo fueron viendo. You can see it because I got lots of more answers here. Tenemos más de 70 personas acá contestando. Nice. Africa, hello, our past alumni from Africa. Okay, nice. Definitely we're gonna do global this year. Definitivamente somos globales y hacia eso vamos este año. A ver, y hay una siguiente pregunta. Referida al sector que representan. ¿De qué lugar vienen? So, which sector represents you better? Ok. Lindo. Mucho del sector público. Equitativo. Other. Interesante, a ver quién fue después el otro. Podemos saber de dónde viene. Bueno, un montón. Bastante parejo, lindo. Sector público, sociedad civil, sector privado, academia, otros. Bastante parejo. Y esto realmente es un muy buen indicio. It's very paired, let's say, the different sectors, public sector, civil society, private sector, academia, and others. This is really great. This is what we want to see. Different actors, different sectors, a same vision, a same goal, and the same will to change the problems that we see in all our cities. So lots of strengths together in this program, in this community. Entonces, esto es justamente lo que nos gusta ver. Tanta gente de tantos lugares distintos, de tantos sectores distintos, cada uno con su experiencia, con sus conocimientos, y esto es lo que queremos darle forma y darle marco para poder llevar este programa de innovadores locales. Bueno, me parece que ya estamos para pasar, para avanzar. Con todo esto dicho y con toda esta introducción hecha, Linda Peña, estás por ahí, te paso la palabra. So Linda, I think that we can move forward in the agenda. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cande. Welcome, everyone. I just saw a message from our colleague saying that we have about 200 people here with us today. Thank you so much for making the time. Muchas gracias, Cande, y bienvenidos, bienvenidas a todos y todas. Estamos muy alegres que están aquí con nosotros hoy y muy agradecidos. A small announcement before we continue. We will now move to simultaneous translation, so you should be soon seeing subtitles in Spanish. And at the same time, one of our colleagues will also be sharing the key highlights in the YouTube chat. Un pequeño anuncio antes de continuar. Vamos a pasar ahora a traducción simultánea y deberían ver de aquí a poco los subtítulos en español en la grabación. Y una de nuestras colegas también va a compartir con ustedes todos los comentarios destacados de la conversación que vamos a tener ahora con Peter Senge y Jeru Bilimoria. Muy bien, vamos a empezar. AYNI, for those of you who don't know, means reciprocity in Quechua. It symbolizes our conviction that transformational change today requires the active participation of all of us, and that we all have a role to play. Today, we have the great honor to hear from Peter Senge, whose thinking, whose new ideas on system change, on collaborative innovation, organizational learning have guided our work for the past decades. And from Jeru Bilimoria, who inspires us every day with her immense capacity to organize people, institutions, communities to achieve large change. We will first hear from Dr. Peter Senge. Dr. Peter Senge has been at the forefront of organizational learning since publishing his widely acclaimed book, The Fifth Discipline, The Art and Practice of the Learning Organization, in 1990. Throughout his career, he has been asking, how do we create the best conditions, including the tools and methods for enabling learning communities? Starting with the creation of the Society of Organizational Learning in 1997, Peter Senge has focused on developing learning communities within and especially among organizations, promoting shared understanding of complex issues and shared leadership to bring about deep change that individual organizations are unable to achieve working alone. This has involved major cross-sector projects focused on global food systems, such as the Sustainable Food Lab, climate change, regenerative economies, and the future of education. Peter Senge was named by the Journal of Business Strategy as one of the 24 people who had the greatest influence on business strategy in the 20th century. In addition to being the founding chairperson of the Society of Organizational Learning, he is also the co-founder of the Academy for System Change and a senior lecturer at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Peter is the author of The Fifth Discipline and the co-author of 3 related field books, Presence and The Necessary Revolution. The Fifth Discipline was recognized by Harvard Business Review as one of the seminal management books of the last 75 years. Peter, it's such an honor having you with us today. Your work and ideas and thinking have been at the forefront of all our work. It's such an honor to welcome you here and continue learning from you.
Thank you very much.
So Peter, to get us started, I wanted to ask you, in one of your past interviews, you mentioned that a constant throughout your work has been your concern with imbalances in our patterns of development. Could you please share more about these imbalances? How are they challenging us to think and behave differently? What are the new mindsets that you see emerging in response to this?
Well, they arise on many levels, and one maybe way to begin thinking about it is kind of the internal and the external. In the external world, you know, our lack of sense of real connection and reciprocity with Mother Earth, with the natural world, is a profound problem. And out of that arises a lot of our lack of relatedness with each other. In the Blackfoot tradition, North American Indian tradition, there's an old saying, your first relationship is with Mother Earth. If that relationship is strained or not developed, then all other relationships will also suffer. So we really do not have a culture of relatedness. That's the simplest way to say it. And instead, of course, we have a very materialistic view of, making money, earning so we can buy, and we can buy so that we can enjoy. And this whole pursuit of, you might say, an illusion of happiness has, in many ways, set the tone for the last 200 years of development. And basically, obviously, it's a Western model that gradually has been exported to the world. So there's imbalance in that sense, but you could also say, well, that imbalance that's manifest or in the external world really arises out of imbalances internally. It was a great American philosopher. He was an interesting character. He was a longshoreman, and he worked loading boats in San Francisco, and had no formal education to speak of. I think maybe, but I doubt he even finished secondary education. But by the time he died, Eric Hoffer was considered one of the eminent philosophers of the mid-20th century in the United States. And he once wrote this beautiful book in which he said, you can never get enough of what you don't really need to make you happy. It's a beautiful statement. You can never get enough of what you don't really need to make you happy. And one of the reasons it's such a lovely statement is it has meanings on multiple levels. In a sense, that's consumerism. That's the drive. That's what keeps the wheel turning, and it keeps the little gerbil or monkey or whatever going around and around and around, because you can never get enough. So no matter how much you get, it never will make you happy, so you need to want more. And this kind of cultivation of wanting is really the cultural engine of consumerism and a materialistic way of living. But if you think about it, the other part of it is that it begs a very simple question. Well, what is it that does make us happy? If you can never get enough of what you don't really need to make you happy, the subtle kind of message in the statement is, well, what do you need to make you really happy? So that brings us to the internal imbalances. And there's many ways to kind of appreciate those. Many of our cultures have roots that go back thousands of years, not hundreds of years, like the modern Western culture. The modern culture, which is really not the Western culture anymore, it's the modern culture. This is the same in Singapore and Hong Kong as it is in New York and Mexico City. But there are cultures that have been around for much, much longer. And inevitably, those that endure have a very more, I would say, refined understanding of the inner world, because ultimately, the inner world shapes the outer world. That's the kind of fundamental premise that I think humans eventually come to. If we're in disarray or imbalance internally, we will produce disarray or imbalance externally. So it really does kind of come back to very simple questions and really very ancient, timeless questions of, what matters? What really matters to us as humans? And that's a question that's at one level, of course, very personal. It's a question that only has power when it's held and really contemplated personally. But you can also say a little bit has been learned over the millennia, since it's not a new question. And that leads you pretty directly into all the world's many spiritual traditions. The word spiritual is a tricky word because in the Western culture, it got co-opted by religion, formal organized religion, which of course is a vehicle, but it's also an institution. So on the other hand, the word has much less of a problematic connotation in Eastern cultures. Because there, that dynamic never played out. You can be a religious Buddhist, but no one sees Buddhism as only a religion. And the same would be true of Taoism and all the old kind of ancient Eastern traditions. They are cultivation traditions. That would be the kind of common word used in English. That also can be practiced as a religion, but that's really separated. It's distinct. So there's a huge store of knowledge that we have in the human community. And I'm illustrating with Eastern spiritual traditions, but of course, spiritual traditions exist in all the cultures that have been around a long time. And for example, it's now pretty well understood that Taoism, which is a very, very old Asian spiritual tradition, really has its roots in the native or indigenous spiritual traditions that go back 15,000 years or more in that part of the world. And so there's kind of a universality if you look deep enough in spiritual traditions. Simple ideas like everything is alive. What it means to be in balance is to be in this continual dance of exchange of energy with the cosmos or the living universe. In Chinese, they have actually 3 different terms for energy. Qing, Qi, Shen. Qing is vitality. So what we say, person has a lot of energy, they have a lot of vitality. They have appetites, which is good. It's a healthy thing to have appetites. But Qi, which often gets translated in English as energy, really has a bad translation. The historical Chinese terms, Qing, the symbol is fire. Qi, the symbol is no fire. So Qi is the energy of stillness, of quiet. When, if you look at rituals in all of our different traditions, one of the fundamentals of all rituals is creating space of silence, because there is a different quality of energy present in silence. Shen is energy beyond form. It's basically spiritual energy. So I'm just using this to illustrate. When you really look at the knowledge that's embedded in very old traditions, you'll see a lot of refinement and a lot of subtleties in understanding this inner world or this experiential world, much of which have been lost. So hence the imbalance.
Yes, and that makes me remember of what the Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh talked about when he wrote about interbeing and the need for a new verb in our dictionary. And it's very interesting that you mentioned the different cultures in the world, because, for example, in their indigenous communities, for example, that have words that reflect this holistic world and these interconnections. For example, I recently read about an indigenous community where they don't have words for mental health versus physical health versus emotional health. They have one word that encompasses all of them. But it's interesting how our own language reflects this division and this specialization that characterizes our modern culture. So I have a question for you. You talked about the lack of this culture of relatedness. How do you think that this culture gets reflected today in the way we work with one another, in the way that we organize? In your publication, The Dawn of System Leadership, you point out that transforming system is ultimately about transforming relationships among people who shape those systems. How do we need to relate and organize differently today to achieve transformational change?
Well, I think all really developmental processes, whether they're individual or collective, in some way will come back to practices, things that you do. If you want to become a musician, you practice. If you want to become a poet, you practice. If you want, whatever you want to become, if you want to become a scientist, you practice. So the question is, what do you practice? And in this domain of kind of collective awareness or shared experience of relatedness, some of the most basic practices that we found really helpful are how you start a meeting, any gathering. If you think again about old cultures, think about indigenous cultures, you would never have a gathering without some ceremonial way of starting the gathering. You don't just get together and start talking. Look at us, we get together and we start talking. Why do you do that? Well, a couple of things are going on. If you think of the ceremony that would open any native gathering. Now, I have only been to some, but I've been to quite a few. And invariably, they have common elements. Usually, there's quiet. There's some sort of ritual like cleansing. In English, we talk about smudging. I think that's a pretty good translation of a Native American word that occurs in most North American cultures. Basically, you have smoke that comes from some sort of vessel that's held some sage or something else that's smoking, and you use that smoke to kind of wash over you and cleanse you. What are you cleansing? Well, you're cleansing your focus on the ego. You're cleansing whatever anxieties you have. You're trying to open your heart so you can be present. I'm just using this to illustrate. That's a practice. Before people try to work together, they have practices. And what they're doing more than anything is acknowledging that they're together. The special opportunity that exists by virtue of just being together, and all the good things that have happened to us, all the benefits, the good fortune that have allowed us to be at this point so we can actually be together. And they're thanking God, and they're thanking spirits, they're thanking all these forces that have enabled them to be here. And secondly, they're praying or expressing an intention to have a good heart, an open heart, to approach the conversation with the benefit of all as primary rather than my agenda. If you think about that a little, then you realize how crazy we are. We have a meeting, we get together, and we go to work. So we find that in many, many forms of this, I'm just using the traditional practices to illustrate. Typically, whenever anyone in any of our networks has a meeting, even a virtual one, we do the same thing. We start with a grounding practice, some silence, some sort of conscious effort to slow down and stop, some journaling, what's moving in me right now, what are the thoughts and feelings I have, maybe a little bit on my intention for being here, and then the ritual of going around the circle and hearing from each person. Typically that takes maybe 15, 20 minutes. If a group's been working for a long time, they may take a little longer. And by the time you finish those three things, the grounding, the personal reflection or journaling, and then going around the circle and hearing each person's voice, you've started to create a ritualized space. You've started to acknowledge that there is everybody who's here is actually here. And if you think about the contrast that with the way we start most meetings, it's really pretty barbarian. We're very uncivilized. I mean, that's it. It's the only word I can think to use. To start a meeting by just getting together and going over the agenda and talking is very uncivilized. And we're pretty uncivilized. There's a great joke about Gandhi when he was once visiting London, and a reporter asked him, Mr. Gandhi, well, what do you think of Western civilization? And he said, it would be a very good idea. So these are old ideas. These are not new ideas. And so that's an example of a practice. So the short answer to your question is practices. You have to have practice, things you do individually and collectively, because no one develops any capacity just because it's a good idea.
And a lot of people who are here with us today are social entrepreneurs and local public leaders who are interested in learning how to collaborate effectively to bring about changes in their cities. What are the most common challenges that you have seen in collaborative system change initiatives? How are leaders creatively tackling or learning those practices that are needed to address these challenges? And you've worked at multiple levels, at the local level, at the regional, global level. Do you think that local, citywide collaborations pose different types of challenges than those at the national, global level?
Well, I mean, obviously there's immense difficulties in doing even the simple things I said. You know, if I describe that as a way to start meetings. I said, well, before you start the meeting, take at least 15 or 20 minutes to have some sort of suitable ceremony. People say, we don't have time. So that's the first problem. We're too busy being ineffective, to be blunt. If you a version of this that can do it, that would just again illustrate in a classroom is before you get to work, kids have a little time to quiet down, do a little reflection, journaling, maybe they do a little drawing, whatever. Teachers say, we don't have time for that. But every time teachers actually do that, they say, oh, we get so much more done because the kids are quiet. So the first thing is we don't have time. We're too busy being busy. So this is a big challenge for entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, perhaps even more than private entrepreneurs. There's this kind of frequency. We're all plugged into our gadgets. We're trying to move at the speed of electrons, but we're not mainly electrons. We're mainly molecules, and we move much more slowly. We're physical. We're not virtual. So our rhythms are completely out of whack. And that's a subtle problem, and it's a pervasive problem. I heard a very poignant presentation by a man who had left Google a few years ago. He was at a company, he was a very successful entrepreneur. Company was purchased by Google, which of course is the way companies like Google grow. They buy smaller companies. And then he became such a good critic of the role of social media that they made him the, quote, chief ethicist his last couple of years in Google. And he characterized his experience of the whole social media world as, and this is a very powerful phrase, he called it the downgrading of humanity. Because we are biological, we are not virtual. To not respect our rhythms and to expect our rhythms to be the rhythms at which electrons move around the planet, which is pretty fast, is violent, disrespectful, and will ultimately lead to all kinds of problems. Social entrepreneurs get really caught up in this because they're so busy doing so many things. So I think that's the first basic challenge, and that's a subtle challenge because it's shared by everybody. Then, of course, you have the obvious challenges. You always need money. You're trying to build collaboration, but collaboration is not easy to build because you have usually a lot of people with their own agendas. And what collaboration usually means in most settings is, well, I can help you if you can help me. That's not real collaboration. That's a marketplace transaction. Why do markets work? A marketplace works if you get more than you give, right? Otherwise, you say bad value proposition. I paid a lot, but it's not worth what I paid. That's a marketplace. And it works because enough people find ways to get more than they give. A community is the opposite. A community works by creating opportunities for people to give. So the first problem we have with collaboration and social entrepreneurs are always drawn into this. One, because they're dealing with real issues that are truly complex. Two, to deal with those issues, people have to work together. So therefore, you want to collaborate, but you don't have the time to build the relational field. And you often have the mindset, I'll help you if you help me. It's kind of that marketplace transactional mindset, as opposed to how do we create a space where we can all contribute to something that has real meaning to us. And the real value of being here is the opportunity to create something together. And it's exactly, of course, when we talked last week, Linda, we were talking about the difference between co-creation and collaboration. And that probably technically is a good way to distinguish it. The problem is words like co-creation get used so much that they become, well, we're co-creating here. But if you look more closely at people's thinking, very often, no, it's a marketplace. I'll participate as long as I get what I want.
Yes, and we often talk about how collaboration many times happens at the solution level. Organizations working on their own solutions, collaborating, supporting one another, which is important. But as you said, many of our challenges require us to think creatively about new solutions and about creating shared understandings of what those problems are and creating shared visions.
Right.
and what you have talked about in terms of creating that awareness of everything is interrelated, everything is interconnected. And in your book on the fifth discipline, you talk about system sensing and systems thinking, which are important skills in gaining an awareness, right, of this interrelatedness. So I have one last question that we have for you, because unfortunately we're running out of time, is what do you think are the most critical changes that we need in order to build a supportive architecture for collaborations, for transformational change to thrive? What are new funding models that we need? How do universities need to change what and how they teach in order to train this next generation of system leaders? What are the skills that our schools need to cultivate early on so that children can become change makers, able to effectively engage others in positive transformational change?
Well, it's many parts to a big question, and we don't have much time. So I would just say start by looking at what we do well already. It's not that we don't do anything well about co-creating. School is a big problem, mainly because it becomes so individualistic and individualistically competitive. But also, sometimes in schools, kids make plays. They do it together, they co-create things. Or maybe sometimes even in sports, people have the experience of actually together, we did something that we could have never done if we hadn't worked together. So I think you always start by looking at what exists now that's in line with what's needed. Project-based learning is a big movement in education. If it's used so the kids are working on real problems and how they have to work together to create real problems, that could be really useful. And it is sometimes. So then if you have we often call it a practice field. This basically means a setting in which you can practice learning how to create together. Then you can start to integrate some tools to do it better. And there's many of those. Obviously, our work has always been about tools and methods at some level, but you need a practice field to apply them. Having tools without the right context or setting in which you can practice won't help you much, because tools are only useful if they're used. So many parts to your question. That's a very, very brief answer. I know you need to move on.
Thank you so much, Peter, for being here with us and for challenging us once again to rethink how we relate with one another, how we create spaces for reflection and participation for everyone. Thank you so much again.
You're very welcome. What you're doing is really important. Good work, and I look forward to how to support it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
And we will now move to our next speaker, who is Jeru Bilimodia. Jeru Bilimodia is an Ashoka Fellow and also a social entrepreneur who's been recognized by the Schwab Foundation, by the Skoll Foundation, and who has dedicated a significant part of her life to advancing children's rights. In the early part of her career, Jeru enabled the global movement for the protection of children and youth through her work with Childline India and later Child Helpline International, an international network of emergency telephone service providers for children, which is present in more than 180 countries. As Jeru gained a deeper understanding and insights into the multiple issues impacting children, Jeru later founded Aflatun, which has provided social and financial education to over 4 million children in more than 100 countries. And later on, Child and Youth Finance International, a global organization that works with partners in over 150 countries to ensure financial inclusion and economic citizenship education for children and young people. Jeru is currently leading One Family Foundation, which incubates social innovations and applies the system change methodology to help organizations scale. One Family Foundation is currently anchoring Catalyst 2030, a global collaborative initiative that seeks to accelerate progress toward the SDGs. Jeru, it's such a pleasure and honor to have you with us today. Your capacity to organize people, institutions, and create large transformational changes and inspiration to all of us. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Linda. The pleasure is all mine. And congratulations to all of you on AYNI.
Thank you so much. On multiple occasions, you speak and you've spoken about the critical importance of listening. And I think that connects a lot with what Peter has shared with us today as well. Listening in order to effect change. Can you please share with us how listening shaped the direction of your work with Childline and later the evolution of your work with Aflatun and Child and Youth Finance International?
Sure. Well, Peter earlier was talking a lot about ancient philosophies, and part of ancient philosophies coming from India, a lot of which we talk about is very much in metaphors and anecdotes. And I was always brought up on the saying, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And you got that because you're supposed to listen more than you're supposed to speak, you know. Unfortunately, that's something which doesn't happen very often, but I say that because that's something which has led me across all my career, starting with Childline, where the way the whole service was organized was based on working with street children, where that was built into the DNA of the organization, moving on to child helplines, where instead of creating a big global Childline world, we decided that it's far better to let individual organizations have their own thing. So instead of saying Child Helpline International took on what I call a listening role, or the role of what I have been quoted often enough of an honest broker, which is working in the background and supporting as many organizations as possible in the forefront to be able to. And taking this concept of honest broker is what led to Aflatun and then Child and Youth Finance International, where we were able to change policies in governments and multiple central banks, mainly because we were trusted as a neutral partner. And moving now to Catalyst 2030 is an open invitation for y'all to join, which y'all already know, but it is a membership network led by social entrepreneurs and innovators. So Peter, you're also welcome to join. Several of your friends are already in it. John Kanya often refers to you. Anyway, I think the important thing over here was Catalyst was formed, and it was formed basically by social entrepreneurs and innovators to accelerate the achievement of the SDGs. In Catalyst, the one thing we said is we are going to play the role of an honest broker. We put that we will convene as honest brokers as our core philosophy. And that's what we have done. And part of that is listening. And it's only because we are listening that we in 2 years have been able to evolve and grow and rapidly expand the way we have.
And a follow-up to this question about listening. For a big part of your career, you work with children and young people. Mm-hmm. Can you just give us a few examples of what spaces and opportunities you created for children and those who experience the problem firsthand to be part of the solution or to shape the solutions?
Simple. Child helplines were totally shaped by children. Our whole business model was shaped by that. Because when I had the idea of a child helpline initially, it was meant for the street kids of Bombay. And they gave me 2 tithes. They gave me a quick response and they said, Didi, which is elder sister in India, you think we'll stay in one city? If my mood is today, I'm in Bombay. And if tomorrow the police are harassing me, I'll go to Delhi or Pune. So all of India and the Indian railway is where we are. So if you set up a city only in one place, what is the use? Very simple, clear example. That's why we went from one number to a national number, 1098. So it was just listening to them which shaped that. The second example, should I give one per organization or should I give all of them from Childline? How would you prefer?
As you would like. It's the most illustrative examples? It can be from any organization.
I can go. The other thing which we set up, which is still there in Childline, is we set up street adalats. That means children can criticize the service and give their feedback on a monthly basis on what we as workers were not doing. So that's what became the concept. As we moved into Aflatun, we were teaching children about saving, and we were teaching children about learning about money, and we were teaching them about savings. And then the children came back to us and they told us, you're talking about teaching and savings, but the truth is we don't always have the money to save. So the program doesn't become as effective. So then we actually started, based on what the children said, enterprises, where we started developing school-based gardens. They started doing community-based projects and then saving the money to do things. So listening to the children, we were able to evolve the services that were there. At an organizational level, and this is linked to systems change, Aflatun was trying to influence governments to change policy on financial education and inclusion. However, all the governors of the central bank said, we will not work with you because it's a branded organization, and they were scared to support one organization against another. So what did we do? I listened to the feedback and I said, how would it work best? How would we be able to change policy? Because the organization is not important, the impact is important. So, well, they helped us to co-create Child and Youth Finance International. And then they came on the board, and because you had governors and central banks on the board who had co-created, policy creation became very, very easy. And again, when we listened to them, when we had reached critical mass, we had to take a very important decision. The decision was, do we continue as an organization, or because we had critical mass, would it be better to house that within OECD? Because that would get more. So we took the bold decision by listening to our members who loved us and said, oh, we love you, so you, but actually the impact will be more if you're housed with OECD, you're housed with AFI for this and with ITC for this. So listening, we actually shut down Child and Youth Finance International and did the achievement systems change of taking projects which were there, handing over. So OECD, which had mainly a Western European network, got a whole African, Latin American network included. And with that, that strengthened and accelerated financial inclusion going forward. Same thing we did with ITC, where we were able to open up a unit for youth entrepreneurship within ITC, and now that's a thriving unit within ITC. And we took child banking products and handed that over to AFI, the Alliance for Financial Inclusion. So by listening to the membership and keeping the ego aside, which to me is as important, we were able to bring about true systems change because the systems took over the concept. And I think that is something. So I think it's not just listening, which is important. It's also being able to take your ego, flush it down, and try to work with that and keeping your membership first. And I think that's something which is most important. And since Peter's talked about philosophy, I have to say, in India and in Hinduism, we talk about karma and dharma. And your karma is doing what you have to do and your destiny. And that's what you take forward. If we just incorporated some ancient concepts in our work now, life would be much easier.
No, thank you. I mean, that definitely exemplifies your approach to creating change, making everyone part of the solution and creating that collective ownership. That has been a recurring theme through your work, has been shifting the power to the collective, is reflecting the way you brought together actors, scaled your impact beyond your organization, and more recently in the Catalyst 2030 initiative as well. What do you think is the type of leadership and organizational models that are needed for collaborative system change initiatives to thrive? You already mentioned keeping the ego in check, listening. How do we need to organize differently? And how do we lead or co-lead this type of efforts?
I think there are several principles, and in Catalyst Systems Change, we in catalyzing change and in systems change, we have some basic principles. I say one is convene as an honest broker. That means by listening to your members and taking it through. Learn to co-create. So don't try to put your ideas, but co-create. I think that is the important thing. Calibrate, which is looking after different things and trying to measure your impact systematically. The next thing, which I always say very clearly, is also calibrate, celebrate small successes, because systems change is a very difficult, long journey. So you always need to celebrate the small successes. Try to cohere as a network and build in more relations and that which is there, and ultimately work together to try to shift this power dynamics that is there. So I think these are some of the principles which we have outlined, and that's something that you can also take forward. So if you keep collaboration at the core, you can do it. And in Catalyst, in a year and a half, I think we've been able to take out 76 collaborations.
Thank you so much, Chiru. And now to conclude our conversation, we have a set of rapid fire questions just to get us in the mood to think about collaborative system change, to visualize in different ways, to relate in different ways. If collaborative system change were a conversation, what would we hear?
Is that a question to me?
Yes.
If it were a conversation, what would we hear? A lot of noise, a lot of people having different opinions.
Great. If collaborative system change were a piece of art, what would it look like?
A lot of different ideas, different drawings coming together. So there can be a mountain which links to a sun, which links to a flower, which links to something else. A forest with an ecosystem, or the earth.
I love that. I think it goes back to what Peter was talking about the awareness of the interrelatedness. What if collaborative system change were a fiction novel? Who would be its protagonist? What would the plot be about?
I think friendship, love, relationships, bonding, totally different. Because all of it is about relationships.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jeru,
Thank you
for being here with us today. It's such a pleasure having you with us and inspiring it with your words of wisdom. Thank you
very much, and I wish you all the success going forward. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. And thank you everyone who is here with us today. We will now be moving to the next part in our conversation. I will give the floor back to Kande. Kande?
Okay, Linda, thanks a lot for that. And overall, an enormous thank you to Peter Senge and Jeru Bilimoria. Definitely, these are the stories and experiences that inspire us, that guide us, and that give meaning and strength to this program, no? And to the community that we are all building and we are trying to build between all of you, among all of you. Entonces, decía un enorme gracias a Peter Senge y a Jeru Bilimoria. Con lo que me quedo es que definitivamente estas son las experiencias y las historias que le dan sentido a este programa, ¿no? Y que le dan sentido a la gran comunidad que estamos creando y que queremos crear de acá en adelante por muchos años. Con lo que me quedo sobre todo es que hay formas de lograr impacto. Acá escuchamos dos grandes maneras y dos grandes referentes de esto. Hay claves para lograr esa transformación de raíz que queremos ver. Como que las cosas empiecen a funcionar de una manera virtuosa, realmente. Me quedo con muchas frases, con muchas cosas que dijeron los dos, súper inspiradoras, y que me quedan casi como recomendaciones, que nos queden grabadas en el desarrollo de todo este tiempo que vamos a tener en el diseño de iniciativas, pero sobre todo en todo el gran tiempo que vamos a tener dándole forma a esta comunidad y dándole forma a las iniciativas y a los proyectos que en cada una de sus ciudades van a ir viéndose. Todas estas cosas de alguna manera están incorporadas en este camino que queremos que todos en esta comunidad recorran. Escuchamos mucho sobre la escucha, sobre el silencio, sobre dar verdadera voz a tantos otros actores que hoy no están en general involucrados en los procesos de toma de decisión, en dejar el ego a un lado tan importante cuando unimos dos campos de acción que normalmente o típicamente no se encuentran, en trabajar sobre nosotros mismos antes de introducirnos en un trabajo casi que frenético de herramientas y metodologías y avance. Pero por sobre todas las cosas, si estas cosas no estuvieran incluidas, ojalá todos los que formen parte de este camino, de esta comunidad, puedan levantar la mano e ir generando este camino entre todos, y que sea lo más virtuoso, lo más rico posible, para transformar de una manera personal, como la manera de liderar y la manera de encarar procesos a nivel local, la manera de generar nuevos procesos de toma de decisión en nuestras ciudades que generen un cambio de abajo hacia arriba, y poder realmente como ponerle fin a esos problemas o esos dolores, esas cosas que nos duelen en nuestras ciudades. Como no sé realmente, creo que hay algunos, no está tomando exacto la traducción de los subtítulos, voy a seguir yendo en inglés y en español. Just to say it quickly in English, what I was saying, that there are ways to gain this impact. There are some key points to gain this transformation that we all want to see in our cities. I take with me some beautiful phrases and things that Peter and Jeru said, and I keep them like very rich recommendations. All these things are incorporated in this journey that we wanna all in this community to follow in this program that brings us together. Like how to hear, like really hear people, how to bring silence to our lives, how to give real voice to all impacted people or stakeholders or actors that are like playing in the local field, how to leave ego aside, how to get touched to our roots or to very wisdom traditions in the world. So, and also, and very important, how to work in ourselves as people before getting into like a crazy way of tools and methodologies and things to do without changing our like human perspective first. So, and what I was saying, that if these things are not really like translated to this journey that we are proposing, well, it's hopefully all the community like get this call to raise up your hands and say, I think that this journey should have this. I would like to get this better. So I would love to get this community like active proposals in how to get a more virtuous cycle of working and changing our cities, and get this change from the bottom to the top, no, from the most local field to and get this real movement much bigger. So, ahora, yendo un poquito para atrás y para ir metiéndonos en el próximo bloque de la segunda parte de este evento, yendo un poco hacia las imágenes del Menti, ¿se acuerdan el mapa y el de qué sector venís? Yo lo que creo, me gustaría traer un concepto que aprendí este año y que me gustó mucho. Yo veo estas imágenes y no pienso que esto es mágico solo por el alcance que está logrando esta comunidad, cada vez más expandida, más grande, más gente, cantidad de personas, distintos sectores, distintos aprendizajes, distintas experiencias. A mí un poco estas imágenes me llevan a este concepto que les digo que aprendimos en un curso de co-creative muy bueno, que es como el caos productivo o el caos creativo. So what I was saying is, going back a little bit and also getting into this, the second part of this event, I want to bring again the images of the Menti. Do you remember that they are of the map and the sector that you come from? They are not, I believe, no, they are not magical just because of the reach that this community is achieving, but because because of the number of people that it's coming here from different sectors with different knowledges and learnings and expertise. But for me, these images lead me to a concept that we learned this year in a co-creative course, very, very recommendable, that I liked a lot. And it's like the productive chaos or the creative chaos. Porque, como les decía, por el momento esto puede ser caótico, ¿no? Digo, ¿cómo unimos, cómo le damos cauce a tanta energía, a tanta gente de lugares tan distintos, y todos que nos resuena estos conceptos de ser abiertos, ser participativos, ser colaborativos, ponerse al servicio de una causa común. Pero un poco si esta energía no tiene un camino claro, no llega muy lejos. Pero en este gran caos hay una enorme potencia. Si podemos, hay como un gran poder de transformación, y si logramos gestionar todo este gran caos que somos, esta diversidad que hay en este grupo, yo creo que se multiplica exponencialmente el impacto que podemos tener. Cada una de su ciudad logra un gran impacto, y esto logra mucha modificación después, mucho impacto después. Y este es el camino que queremos que el programa y la comunidad se vaya robusteciendo. Ahora vamos a escuchar a 4 referentes del año pasado, que de distintos lugares pueden dar testimonio de cómo vivieron este camino, este caos creativo que lleva realmente finalmente a un buen puerto. Pero podríamos nombrar o contar infinidad de historias que dan luz sobre esto. Cada equipo creo que tiene una historia que da un poco de luz sobre esto que pareció un caos al principio, pero logró un cauce y dio muy buenos resultados. Por ejemplo, podríamos nombrar como, no sé, el equipo de Godoy Cruz de Argentina ganó de una manera figurativa, lógico, años de aprendizaje cruzándose en el programa con el equipo de Lima, que le compartió su largo recorrido en involucrar a niños, niñas y adolescentes en los procesos de decisión de las políticas públicas locales. O de cómo la Secretaría de Turismo del Gobierno Local de Pérez Celedón, en Costa Rica, diseñó una estrategia tan empática de turismo inclusivo, algo súper novedoso para ellos, nunca antes lo habían hecho, y por esto, lógico, con tanta capacidad real de impacto, al hacer dupla con Robert Almeida, un emprendedor social de la ciudad que sufre él mismo de discapacidad visual. Y lo bueno de esto es que la estrategia no solo es realmente inclusiva, sino que, para que vean la potencia que tiene para una ciudad, porque también se posiciona como motor de desarrollo económico, al posicionarse ellos mismos como la primera ciudad del país en tener toda su oferta turística de aventura habilitada para personas con discapacidad. So I'm gonna switch to English. I know at the moment this may seem chaotic, so many people, all of us from different places, different expertises, different sectors, wanted obviously to be, we all want to be open and participative and collaborative, to put themselves at the service of a common cause. But if this energy does not have a clear path, a clear journey, it does not go very far. But in this great chaos, also, there is an enormous power, a power of transformation that, if it is well managed, I think it multiplies exponentially its impact. So, and in this path, we want to, this is the path that the program wants to offer all the participating cities and the participating teams. I really try to get a really fruitful collaboration. Now we are going to listen to 4 referents from last year who have from different places. They can give their testimonies on how they live this journey and this creative chaos that finally leads them to good port. Definitely there's a good final story here. I think that every team from last year and other programs too can have really, in fact, they have these kind of stories. But we can, for example, we can talk about how Godoy Cruz, the team of Godoy Cruz, Argentina, won in a figurative way years of learning by crossing themselves with a team from Lima, who share their long journey and their great learnings about how to involve children and teenagers in the decision-making processes of local public policies, or how the Secretary of Tourism of the local government of Pérez Celedón of Costa Rica designed such an empathetic strategy of inclusive tourism, and of course, as being inclusive and as being so empathetic, it has much more capacity to gain that impact. By teaming with Robert Almeida, that is a social entrepreneur from the city, who himself suffers from visual impairment. So, and above all, this strategy is not only truly inclusive and totally innovative and well, new for the city, but also aims to be an engine of economic development for the city by positioning itself as the first city in the country who really have all their offer of adventure tourism applied or adapted to people with disabilities. So trying to also give new opportunities of employment there for people. So, yo no voy a hablar más de estas historias porque lo lindo es poder escuchar ahora a los protagonistas. Así que, si te parece, Poppy, pasamos a vos. So, Poppy, I'll go with you to
Hola,
hear
Cande.
this.
Acá estoy. Gracias, Cande, y gracias de nuevo a cada uno y a cada una por estar con nosotros. De alguna forma, el hecho de que estén hoy acá los hace ser parte de esta comunidad que estamos creando. Así que ahora solo queda ver cómo seguimos involucrándonos, y un poco la idea del panel que vamos a presentar ahora es eso, es convencerlos, es contarle qué hay en este programa para cada uno, y ojalá cada uno pueda encontrar su lugar y sigamos conectándonos de aquí en adelante para trabajar juntos en esta transformación que buscamos. Vamos a arrancar, bueno, ahí ya se están conectando, les agradecemos y le damos la bienvenida también a cada uno, cada una de estos participantes estrellas que tenemos hoy con nosotros. Solo para avisar, yo voy a estar hablando en español y el panel va a ser en principio en español y con la participación de un equipo en inglés, y por el chat nos van a estar traduciendo, así que cuenten con eso y busquen esa traducción. Pero bueno, les agradecemos, y antes un ejercicio muy chiquito. Ahí, Andrés, si me compartís la pantalla, y para hacer esto un poco más interactivo, vamos a ver esta imagen que fue apareciendo de a ratos, y queremos ver qué ven en esta imagen cuando aparece. Si pueden escribirnos ahí en el chat qué es lo que ven, y a mí acá en el chat de Zoom, si me dicen si tenemos a alguien participando o si se nos fueron y ya no nos quieren escuchar. ¿Hay alguna respuesta ya en el chat? Conejo, Pato, ¿alguien más? Siempre hay alguien que ve alguna cosa distinta. Bueno, era simplemente para sacarlos un poco del lugar donde estaban un ratito, y pensar en esto, en que ahora vamos a escuchar multiplicidad de voces, y que nosotros es algo que buscamos cuando pensamos en el cambio sistémico y en la colaboración. Entonces queríamos traer también, cuando pensábamos en estos 4 participantes, queríamos pensar en distintas miradas que cada uno tiene acerca del programa que tenemos entre manos. Y ahí, simplemente para seguir, bueno, ahí veo que nos están contestando, gracias por participar, gracias por seguir ahí. Les quiero contar acerca de 4 destacados que nosotros vemos del programa, y también por eso trajimos a estos participantes. Hay 4 cosas que pasan en el programa y que están buenas, y que nosotros las queremos compartir. Y una es que, bueno, movilizás a la población impactada, y al movilizar a la población impactada los involucrás y aprendés de ellos en el proceso de diseño. Otra cosa que pasa durante el programa es que incorporas un abordaje de cambio sistémico, y al incorporarlo podés resolver la problemática y abordar sistemas más complejos. Un tercer destacado es que formás redes de cambio locales, y al formar redes de cambio con otros actores claves en el sistema, construís perspectivas que permiten un mayor impacto. Y un cuarto punto es que pasás a ser parte de una comunidad de innovadores locales, y esa comunidad te brinda sostén, y te ayuda y te da apoyo durante el proceso. Bueno, con esta idea de estos 4 destacados, le damos la bienvenida formal a nuestro panel, a nuestro segundo panel del día, y ojalá podamos escucharlos un ratito a cada uno. Vamos a tener con nosotros a Zairam Rivas, que representa a la organización Luchemos, y formó parte del equipo de Chacao, Venezuela, en la edición 2021 del programa. Tenemos también a Paula Watcher, que es fundadora de la Red por la Infancia, y formó equipo con la ciudad de Buenos Aires, en Argentina. Tenemos a Luciano Crisafulli y Ramiro Argañarás, de la Municipalidad de Córdoba, Argentina, del Laboratorio de Innovación. Y tenemos también a Noel Banda y Hastings Ada, que son de Blantyre, Malawi, y que son universitarios que se conocieron en la Universidad de Drones y que nos van a contar también acerca de qué hicieron y por qué el programa fue importante para ellos. Ahora voy a dejar de compartir y le vamos a dar lugar a ellos, y tenemos unas preguntas para cada uno, y ojalá nos puedan ir contestando y esto pueda ser una conversación. Zairam, vamos a arrancar con vos, si estás por ahí. Y la pregunta para vos, y también abrimos acá, que quien quiera preguntarles algo en el chat lo puede hacer, y queremos preguntarte cuál fue el valor de involucrar a las personas impactadas, en tu caso a los más de 200 jóvenes que participaron de su proceso, y cómo impactó en el proceso de diseño y por qué fue importante. Si querés contar mínimamente también de qué se trató tu proyecto, y bueno, esto, por qué fue importante su participación.
Sí, bueno, buenos días, muchísimas gracias a todos y todas los que están acá por la invitación. Saludos al equipo organizador del concurso de Innovadores locales y bueno, muy contenta de poder compartir nuestra experiencia hoy acá con ustedes. Comenzando para hablarles sobre nuestro proyecto, Luchamos es un proyecto de formación e incidencia pública que busca el desarrollo de capacidades en los niños, niñas y adolescentes para que ellos desde muy pequeños, desde muy jóvenes, se reconozcan como líderes, agentes de cambio, sujetos de derechos y adquieran las herramientas necesarias para que ellos puedan incidir en la agenda pública y de esta forma pues contribuir con el fortalecimiento de la democracia. Este proyecto nace como la necesidad de dar respuesta a la poca participación de los jóvenes en Venezuela en lo público, del desinterés por participar en algunas actividades o acciones que tienen que ver con la transformación social, con lo público, con lo político, etcétera. Y bueno, digamos que además del contexto en el cual nosotros nos encontramos en Venezuela, vimos la necesidad de seguir creando y desarrollando muchos más espacios, pues que preparen a los jóvenes para la participación y que si bien a veces se coopta un poco esta participación en los jóvenes, digamos a partir de los 18 años, vimos y nos encontramos con la necesidad de desarrollar aún más estos espacios en la población adolescente, que permitiera también contrarrestar un poco esta visión adultocéntrica, pues que nos acompaña y que muchas veces desmeritamos o no le damos la prioridad porque, bueno, son adolescentes y creemos que solamente es por tener esa edad, no tienen las capacidades o no están en este caso preparados para participar y para aportar a la sociedad. En este sentido, cuando nosotros llegamos al concurso de innovadores locales, ya nosotros teníamos aproximadamente 9 meses trabajando con el proyecto. Este es un proyecto que nace de la Red de Jóvenes y Agentes de Cambio de Achoca de Venezuela, que por cierto fue un inicio de lo que fue el trabajar en colaboración de varios jóvenes agentes de cambio que pudieron a través de sus diferentes visiones construir una idea conjunta y así nace en este caso Luchamos. Y lo maravilloso del concurso es que nos permitió repensar nuestra idea y nuestra iniciativa y ampliar aún más esta red de cambio y construir una red de cambio que nos brindara nuevas perspectivas, que nos brindara nuevos aportes, que nos brindara nuevas miradas de la problemática que nosotros estábamos abordando y además la posibilidad de nosotros pensar nuestro problema desde lo local, que también fue muy importante, ya que nosotros en este caso, digamos que pues veníamos trabajando desde las organizaciones de la sociedad civil y buscando impactar adolescentes con las cuales nosotros hicimos alianzas institucionales con escuelas para formar estos adolescentes y darles estas herramientas para incidir, pero el hecho de, digamos, a través del concurso, hacer vinculaciones con un gobierno local, en este caso del municipio de Chacaos, pues nos permitió abordar la problemática y repensar un problema que desde hace mucho tiempo no se abordaba y aquí en Venezuela no está tan desarrollado, que es cómo se crean desde lo local estos espacios de participación de los adolescentes. Y en este caso, el hecho de responder a la pregunta que nos hacen, fue maravilloso poder involucrar a más de 200 jóvenes, porque digamos que justamente cuando comenzamos el concurso de Innovadores locales, nosotros estábamos en el proceso de selección de todos estos jóvenes que iban a ser parte del programa de formación, y pues tuvimos la oportunidad de entrevistar y de saber la opinión de todos estos jóvenes que se estaban postulando al programa de formación. Y bueno, cuando nosotros les preguntamos y hablamos con ellos, la mayoría coincidía, y eso nos dio muchísimos insumos en los pocos espacios de participación que hay actualmente para los adolescentes en el país. Y
Gracias, Airam, y era un poco la idea esta de que pudieras contar tu experiencia, esta idea de que confirman o traen nuevas visiones al problema que ustedes estaban trabajando, ¿no? Y cómo el traer a la población impactada resulta algo clave para poder seguir trabajando. Así que muchas gracias por tu intervención, por sumarte hoy, por lo que fue la participación el año pasado. Seguimos trabajando, seguramente te convoquemos o puedas hablar con los que participen este año también, pero realmente fue una experiencia súper inspiradora para todos. Seguimos adelante porque ya el tiempo siempre queda corto, pero teníamos un plan y vamos a tratar de seguir adelante, y ahí ya la tenemos a Paula Watcher, de Red por la Infancia, conectada. Y Paula, vamos con la pregunta para vos, y ¿cuál fue el valor de incorporar el abordaje del cambio sistémico para resolver el problema que ustedes traían entre manos? Y si querés contanos un poco del problema, cortito, y por qué fue tan importante este abordaje.
Dale. Nosotras, gracias a todos, gracias por invitarnos y gracias por la experiencia del año pasado, porque la verdad que fue muy rica. Nosotros, desde Red por la Infancia, lo que nos propusimos es generar un modelo de abordaje para prevenir y abordar las violencias sexuales contra niños, niñas y adolescentes. Entonces, la primera, el poder abordar y plantearte el problema desde un modelo de cambio sistémico, lo que te permite es tener un mejor entendimiento del problema. Tradicionalmente siempre nos enfocamos en los mecanismos de respuesta, en diseñar programas, pero si no terminamos de entender cuáles son los determinantes, cuáles son los actores y cuáles son los puntos de intervención o palancas donde se minimiza el esfuerzo y se maximiza el impacto, siempre generamos programas con impacto relativo, digamos. Lo que nos permitió este concurso en particular fue, primero, generar un mapa claro de cuáles son los actores. El abuso sexual contra niños, niñas y adolescentes atraviesa un montón de actores en el marco de la corresponsabilidad. No es un tema exclusivo donde ningún actor del Estado tiene un liderazgo claro. Entonces, como suele suceder en este tipo de problemas multicausales y multidimensionales, es un problema compartido por todos, pero termina siendo en la práctica de nadie. Entonces, lo interesante fue en este caos creativo que decía Candelaria al principio, fue poder tener entrevistas bilaterales y entender la percepción y el entendimiento que tenían cada uno de los actores acerca de cuál era el problema del abuso sexual, según su perspectiva y según su mirada, y también, sobre todo, cuáles eran sus roles y funciones en específico a la hora de abordar este tema. Lo que nos dimos cuenta es que habían acciones poco coordinadas, había una visión fragmentada, habían intervenciones poco capacitadas, y había poca claridad acerca de quién tenía que hacer, cómo y cuándo. Entonces, este primer diálogo de co-construcción nos permitió sobre todo co-construir entre cada uno de los protagonistas una visión compartida y tener mayor claridad de cuáles eran esos puntos de palanca, digamos, o esos puntos donde podíamos intervenir fácilmente, de menor resistencia para provocar un cambio sistémico, maximizando el impacto. El tener esta claridad, que todos los actores tengan una claridad, de que todos primero supieran cuáles eran las prioridades, de que cada uno podía tener un rol específico y que no se trataba de una competencia de o yo hago esto o vos haces lo otro y jugar, como decimos en Argentina, el juego del paquete, ¿no? Tirar el problema hacia la otra área, sino que podía haber un modelo de liderazgo funcionales, colaborativo, y donde todos podían transformarse en agentes de cambio, interviniendo desde su área específica, pero que en la sumatoria generaban un cambio social. Eso nos permitió tener una hoja de ruta clara, que todos supieran saber qué hacer y cómo hacerlo. Y este abordaje sistémico que parte de un diagnóstico compartido, creo que fue de gran valor, al punto que, bueno, ahora en la ciudad de Buenos Aires estamos teniendo el primer programa piloto de abordaje y respuesta multisectorial, donde hemos comprometido no solamente al Ejecutivo, sino también al Poder Judicial, al Legislativo, a organizaciones de la sociedad civil, y donde estamos trabajando de una manera colaborativa para que todos podamos brindar una mejor respuesta a los niños víctimas de abuso sexual. Así que muchísimas gracias y les súper recomiendo este desafío tan lindo.
Gracias, Pau, gracias por estar hoy acá, por contarnos los avances del proyecto. Nos entusiasma mucho saber que esto sigue adelante y que se ve la realidad, ¿no? Cómo puede impactar el camino que se propone y que vamos trabajando en conjunto. Seguimos adelante, tenemos a Ramiro y a Luciano de la Municipalidad de Córdoba, del Laboratorio de Innovación. Queríamos preguntarles a ustedes cómo fue el armado de su red de cambio, esa palabra que ahí se va a empezar a acomodar porque ahora somos 3. No se preocupen, nuestra voz sigue. Ahí estamos, ahí está Luciano. ¿Cómo fue el armado de su red de cambio y si fueron claves sus aportes para el entendimiento del problema y el diseño de la solución?
Buenísimo, muchísimas gracias. Bueno, buenos días a todas y todos. Antes que nada, muchas gracias por esta invitación. Estamos, la verdad, que muy contentos de poder contar esta gran experiencia. Bueno, mi nombre es Ramiro Argañaras y me encuentro con Luciano Crisafulic, el director de innovación de la Municipalidad de Córdoba. Bueno, somos la ciudad de Córdoba, como dije, que está situada en la región centro de Argentina. Bueno, nuestra iniciativa, desarrollada en el marco del concurso Innovadores locales de la edición pasada, es decir, la edición 2021, se llama LUDIC, y se trata de un programa educativo integral que busca fortalecer la seguridad alimentaria de niñas y niños mediante un modelo lúdico que cuente con los insumos para aprender las diversas instancias del proceso de generar su propio alimento, donde las niñas y niños participan activamente en todo el ciclo de producción de los vegetales. Bueno, para este panel particularmente queremos destacar y hablar sobre el eje principal de nuestro proyecto, que fue la gran red de cambio. Bueno, un cambio sistémico requiere de un equipo interdisciplinario, y es por ello que generamos una red de expertos que nunca antes se habían juntado para trabajar en conjunto, e integra a actores de los 3 sectores, el sector público, privado y la comunidad. Esta gran red de cambio que generamos está comprendida por un alrededor de 40 personas que fueron seleccionadas según las 5 aristas principales, que son los 5 pilares que sostienen nuestro proyecto. Estas aristas son la arista social, la arista técnica, la arista educativa, la arista ambiental y de salud. Bueno, a inicios del proceso formamos una dupla de trabajo con el emprendimiento local Ponio, y en conjunto logramos validar el producto mínimo viable. Pero bueno, al avanzar en el proceso y gracias a la creación de esta red de expertos, pudimos identificar rápidamente potenciales riesgos en la implementación de este producto que estábamos generando. De esta manera asimilamos que habíamos fracasado, pero de manera muy rápida y el costo había sido muy bajo. Entonces, sin embargo, a pesar de esto, logramos capitalizar eso que habíamos aprendido y en conjunto con la red de cambio colaborativa pudimos idear y comenzar un nuevo proceso donde ideamos una solución de mayor impacto y con mayor foco en lo educativo y en lo cultural. Bueno, nuestra red de cambio está basada en estas 5 aristas que mencioné anteriormente, pero bueno, incluye asociaciones civiles que trabajan en el territorio, organizaciones expertas en nutrición infantil, el Instituto de Tecnología Agropecuaria local, emprendedores y emprendedoras locales del sector productivo, facultades de nutrición, facultades de salud locales, y además organizaciones que trabajan con el tratamiento de materiales residuales. Que se puede ver ahí en la imagen, digamos, bueno, los principales actores.
Está buenísimo.
Bueno, esa red de cambio, lo que nos permitió, cuál fue el gran impacto, no solamente en el marco del concurso, sino después para los otros diseños de política pública que implementamos. La verdad que en el inicio la solución que planteábamos era bien distinta y la red de cambio la transformó por completo, y eso lo que nos hizo, lo que nos ayudó es al famoso fracasar rápido y barato, ¿no? Nos ayudó a darnos cuenta rápido de que la solución original que estábamos pensando era de alto costo y de difícil implementación, y gracias a la red de cambio pudimos transformar y pivotear en la solución, entendiendo de que había pasos previos que debíamos dar, y eso desde el punto de vista del diseño de la política pública le da mucha estabilidad al proyecto, porque la solución que ahora planteamos es mucho más realizable, y además lo bueno es que también desde el sector público el armado de la red te genera un compromiso adicional, te obliga, por así decirlo, a cumplir con los plazos y con los proyectos estipulados. Así que la verdad que esa red de cambio que surgió a partir del concurso, para otras políticas públicas que implementamos en el área de innovación de la ciudad de Córdoba, estamos armando distintas redes de cambios, por ejemplo, para trabajar con emprendimientos de base tecnológica o para trabajar la temática de brecha digital, que son otras dos de las verticales que estamos trabajando en el área de innovación. Así que, por último, recomendarles la participación en el concurso para aprender de la metodología, pero además no es solamente un aprendizaje teórico, sino que realmente, como decía Ramiro, en el caso nuestro terminamos armando una red de cambio en donde participaron más de 10 instituciones, y fue realmente una experiencia muy buena para aprender a hacer política pública.
Gracias Lucho, gracias Rami, gracias por contarnos también que es algo que están replicando en sus ciudades con otros proyectos. Esto es algo que para nosotros también habla del impacto que tiene el programa y que nos gusta que pase y poder contarlo también al resto. Bueno, y vamos gracias chicos, vamos con la última parte de este panel. Ahora vamos, sí, hago un switch a inglés y las traducciones pasan a ser en español. So we will try to talk to Hastings and Noel. Noel was with Bad Network, so we will try with Hastings. Are you there, Hastings? Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Yes, I'm here.
Great. So the network is working well. The question for you is, at what point in the process was it key to feel part of a community? What obstacles did you overcome, and in which ways were you supported by the network of local innovators and by the program's support team?
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. By the way, my name is Hastings Hatton. As has been said, it's a pleasure to be a part of the winning team from the previous cohort of the Local Innovators program. Yeah, so I will just share with you the experience that it has been on our adventure throughout the innovation program. Okay, so I will start with the essence of involving the local community in our challenge. So actually, we had noted that when we conducted the change network meetings, the very first point that we were advised to work on was to make sure that the local community is involved as we try to address the challenge that we identified to solve. Yeah, so the panel, including our facilitators and other experts that we identified to help us in prototyping the innovation idea, they had emphasized the importance of involving the local community. Yeah, so, and then also, we also noted that it was of great use to involve the local community, because we cannot just do a theoretical aspect of how we can deal with the challenge unless if we involve the local community. So I would say that it was very important, and it had helped us a lot to maybe be part of the winning team, because simply we made sure that we incorporated the local community. So another thing is about the challenges that our team had faced. So in the first place, the major challenge that we experienced was regarding communication among our team members. For instance, with my team, the members currently are living in faraway cities. That is to say, we didn't have to meet in person on how we move with the program. So the main challenge was that we were limited to having in-person meetings. Rather, we were working on we had to work online. So maybe if there were some other things that our team had to discuss, we were supposed to use the WhatsApp platform, Zoom calls. So that was maybe one of the challenges that we had encountered in this innovation program. And then another thing is the turn-up of the change network team in the meetings that we organized to help us in prototyping the program. Simply because I remember we had postponed maybe more than 2 times our scheduled meetings. So that was also another challenge that maybe we invited some guests to be with us on such a particular day, and then come the time and the scheduled time, we found out that maybe some other change network team, change network personnel, they were not showing up to the meeting. So that was also another challenge that we had encountered. Yeah, so a lot of challenges. So how did we move on as a team to overcome the challenges? Simply because if we had been among the winning team, it means that we were able to overcome all the challenges that we had experienced as a team. So in the first place, I would say that teamwork makes the dream work. So teamwork, that was how we tried to overcome the challenges that we had encountered. So I would emphasize to say that in our team, we tried that maybe if we were moving on with the prototyping stage, we tried that each and every team member, and also not forgetting the facilitators, because the facilitators were the key concept of the project. So we tried to involve them to work hand in hand. Maybe if we had some other challenges, we would immediately report to them so that they help us on how we overcome the challenges. So working hand in hand with the facilitators and also teamwork among the teams that were involved, that is how we managed to overcome the challenges that we had made throughout the journey. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Hastings. And thank you for talking about the facilitator. So this is a figure that is going to be very important during the process. And now, Kande will tell you how we continue, but we will keep on talking about the process and the program. And the facilitator is a role that you are going to get to know very well soon. So, Kande, seguimos con vos. Thank you all. Gracias por estar.
Bueno, gracias Poppy, gracias a todos los que hablaron y contaron su experiencia. Y con esto damos formalmente inicio al llamado a una nueva camada, al grupo de 2022. Este año el programa de Innovadores Locales va a seleccionar 100 ciudades de todo el mundo y va a estar en inglés y en español todo el programa. Ahora vamos para no extendernos más en el tiempo, y para los que realmente quieren conocer cómo participar, cómo inscribirse, etc., vamos a poner unos links a un Zoom para que se puedan poner ahí directamente y ocupar los próximos 20 minutos con esas preguntas. Solo muy sintéticamente, para formar parte del programa hay que inscribirse en equipo, un equipo conformado entre funcionario de gobierno local más emprendedor social, y el programa con los equipos seleccionados empieza el 1 de junio, y es un proceso de diseño que abarca 6 meses de trabajo. En diciembre todas estas iniciativas finales van a ser parte de Marketplace. Después de escucharlo a Peter tengo ganas de cambiarle el nombre, que lanzó AYNI hace poco, y por esto van a estar presentados a un círculo de posibles inversores que pueden acompañar la implementación de las iniciativas diseñadas. Y por otro lado, los 3 equipos que destaquen por la calidad de su proceso de diseño, de todo este camino recorrido, ganan una experiencia transformadora en el 2023. So, just to finish, Thanks, Poppy, and thanks to all the people, the participants from last year that wanted to talk and tell us about their experience. We start formally the call for a new cohort for this 2022 group. Just to be very shortly, the Local Innovators program this year will select 100 cities around the world, and the program will be in English and Spanish. To be part of the program, you must submit as a team of local government officials and social entrepreneurs. And the program will be, with the selected team, will start on June the 1st, and the design process will last 6 months. In December, all these final initiatives will be part of a marketplace that, after listening to Peter, I want to change the name, that was recently launched by AYNI. And therefore they will be presented to a circle of potential investors who can accompany their implementation. On the other hand, the 3 teams that stands out for the quality of the design process developed win a transformative experience in 2023. So, para ir más en detalle, como les decía, para conocer más, hacer todas sus preguntas, quitarse todas las dudas sobre cómo formar parte, nos metemos ahora en un Zoom que va a haber una sala para español, una sala para inglés, y poder cada uno participar y hacer sus preguntas. Y para los que no pueden sumarse a este Zoom, pero igualmente quieren conocer más sobre el programa en otras instancias, vamos a mostrar ahora, va a estar proyectado, unos consultorios que vamos a dar semanalmente todos los martes, en este mismo horario, para otra vez espacio de preguntas y dudas. Y también van a ver las fechas importantes, cuándo cierra el periodo de inscripciones, etc. Por otro lado, si quisieran llegar al equipo de AYNI de otra manera, también ahí en la pantalla van a ver nuestros mails y maneras de contactarnos, maneras de llegar. So, to go into more detail about how to be part of the program, what it means to participate in the program, and all the doubts you may have, we invite you to join in the following Zoom link. We will have a breakout rooms in English and another one in Spanish. So we can have the following minutes, there. You can make your questions and everything there. So for the ones who can't join the Zoom now, but want to know more about how to be part of the program, we will have every Tuesday in this same hour, consultancy space, let's say, for you to make all your questions there. And well, we will do this 3 times until the registration period closes. We also will put there in the screen other ways of reaching out by mail and by our webpage. So, ojalá los veamos ahora en el Zoom o nos veamos en alguna de estas otras instancias, y por supuesto ojalá nos veamos a partir de junio como parte de los equipos seleccionados. So hope to see you all in the Zoom or in next stages, or mostly in the program itself. Y con esto damos cierre a este evento de lanzamiento, a esto que empieza a girar, que empieza a moverse una vez más como todos los años. Muchas gracias por ser parte, muchas gracias a todos los que hablaron, a todos los oradores, y muchas gracias a todos los que estuvieron ahí del otro lado participando. Así que, adiós y gracias. So goodbye, and thank you all for being here. We launched definitely and formally this program. Thanks for being part. Thanks to all the people that spoke, and thank you to all of you that participated in the chat and was there so interested, like mostly interested in this proposal of being part of something bigger, something that transcends us, and something that really works for transforming our cities, for really and getting these real solutions that leaves our pains apart, let's say. So goodbye, and thank you to all of you.